repeal the PTA. We have gone from district to district. Then we suspended it middle of the year because we couldn't have a street corner signature campaign when all the street corners were full of vehicles in fuel queues. So that was temporarily suspended. Now, whether there are fuel queues or not, we have decided to relaunch this signature campaign island-wide because PTA is being used again. Prevention of Terrorism Act, as we all know, was enacted in 1979 as a temporary provisions law. In fact, even today, the name of the law is Prevention of Terrorism Temporary Provisions Act of 1979. It was for 6 months. Then it was extended every 6 months until 1982, when in 1982 the provision that said that it is valid for 6 months was removed by an amendment, and it became a permanent act, and now thereafter it's been extended in our country for 40 years now. All through this time, it has been recognized as an unconstitutional law, even from its very inception. This is a very strange law because when it went to the Supreme Court as an urgent bill, apart from the cabinet certification that it was an urgent bill in 1979, the cabinet also certified that it will be passed with a 2/3 majority, because cabinet considered that this was unconstitutional law. So only thing the Supreme Court considered was whether it required a referendum. Then in 1982, when the amendment was brought in, there was a particular amendment that said that the minister can decide where a person is to be detained, and that was struck down by the Supreme Court as requiring a referendum. Supreme Court said it offends Article 4C read with Article 3, entrenched provisions of the Constitution, but it also said it can't come into the law, but the minister can make administrative orders to be supervised by the High Court. Why they said the High Court was trials are in the High Court for PTA, and once the matter comes in the High Court must have overall supervision. But as we all know, people are detained under the PTA for several years before the matter even reaches a High Court. So that's a redundant provision. Now, the point I am making is, the government knew, the Supreme Court knew from its very inception that this law was an unconstitutional law. Even in Sri Lanka, it was acknowledged as an unconstitutional law. Now, over the years, many rights groups have condemned it as a draconian piece of legislation and called for its repeal. We lost our GSP Plus concession because of PTA, and in 2017, then Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe actually travelled to Brussels and gave an undertaking that PTA would be repealed. And upon that promise, GSP Plus was reinstated for Sri Lanka. But 5 years on, the law is still extant. Not only is it extant, contrary to promises given to the UN and various international bodies and to this country, that PTA will not be used, that there was a moratorium on PTA. Now, this month, they have restarted using the PTA, and 3 detention orders were signed early this week by the Minister of Defence, President Ranil Wickremesinghe. So this is against all the promises given to the citizens of this country, to various international fora, that PTA would be repealed, and until its repeal, it will not be used. Now it is being used not against who might actually be called a terrorist, but against people who have participated in peaceful protests. Key personalities who are part of the protest movement have been detained under the PTA. So this is therefore an urgent need now to revive the signature campaign and ask every citizen in this country to require the government to repeal this most heinous of legislation that is in our statute books forthwith. So this press conference is for the purpose of announcing the relaunch of the signature campaign. අපි අද මේ රැස් වෙලා ඉන්නේ ත්‍රස්තවාද වළක්වන පනත අහෝසි කරන්න කියලා අපි